keeping it simple, the first thing to do is look at their video assets and see if they could establish something on Youku, and then also look at ways to establish their WeChat presence, because I think nowadays WeChat is actually more important than having a website. Weibo has become quite expensive to invest in. I don't see that as a necessary first step, because coming in as a new brand, nobody knows your brand anyway, or nobody knows your organization anyway. So there's very little reason for people to follow you on Weibo. The mentality isn't there. I think as a second step, you could establish Weibo, but not as a first step. Yeah. But depending on the audience, sometimes, if it's a younger audience, you might want to look at platforms like Bilibili.
Bilibili, hello, hello. Ian, McKellen, Bilibili.
And then you could also look at some additional up-and-coming platforms. This year, at least, live streaming has become a very hot topic in China. And this is something different. For China, we now have maybe like 20, 30 live streaming platforms. So if they really want to invest in China, they have to look at all these various mixes. There are only really two standard ways that you do that. The first is through paid advertising. So luckily, WeChat has now opened up their paid advertising to most businesses. They've lowered the cost of entry, so you could actually run a very targeted campaign on WeChat to acquire your audience. For video portals like Youku, you could also have paid advertising programs as well. And the other way, what I call the standard way, is just using influencers. Except the practice of using influencers has become overheated in this market. Something that would have cost you, maybe £1,000 previously for an influencer to cooperate with you, now would probably cost 3 times that at least. So maybe that's not a cost-efficient mode of promoting yourself anymore. I think one big mistake that a lot of Western brands make when coming into this market is they think they could just put subtitles on their videos and then have Chinese audiences become instantly interested. Usually you have to go a step further and localize so that everybody could just watch it and understand it in Chinese. So that's a very basic step, but a lot of people miss it. I even seen some brands come in and just copy paste their English content when it's text content into their WeChat, expecting Chinese audiences to be so fluent in English that they would understand that. The other thing is paying attention to the cultural differences, I guess. So Chinese people perhaps are a bit more conservative in their taste, and they really want assurance from their peers to certify that, if I like something, hey, it's because it is generally liked. Whereas I think in the West, you have much more of an independent attitude towards things that you like. But Chinese people really don't like sort of this type of off the beaten path type of approach to appreciating art. The very first one has nothing to do with marketing. The very first one has to do with your legal entity setup. As a foreign entity, setting up a business in China takes 6 to 9 months. Sometimes I've seen people take 16 months to get all the approvals, because you have to do a lot of paperwork. It's very confusing, and if you don't follow up on something, all of a sudden you set yourself back by 3 months. So that's the first mistake. Second, I guess, is again, got nothing to do with marketing. I highly recommend having a Chinese person be the leader of the team, or at least someone who speaks Chinese really fluently. I think to operate in this market, yet another mistake that foreign businesses make is they think they could airdrop in someone from their home country and have that person all of a sudden become very successful in this market. But without knowing the language, without kind of being connected to the local market and the local talent pool, that person is going to get into a lot of difficult situations that a local person would have avoided. And I've seen this happen many, many times. So that's two. Number three, I guess, is be realistic with the marketing budget, because nobody comes into China with a shoestring budget. I mean, it's, you know, for such a big economy, for such a large population, it's ridiculous to think that you could somehow magically come in with virtually no money and still like get everybody to love you. It just doesn't work that way. The fourth is kind of a very basic thing, but pay attention to your digital presence. I think as a brand or as an organization, you have to understand that Chinese people now lead very digital lives. So you somehow have to make sure that whatever you're offering, whatever you're presenting, represent you well in this market. The very basics, if you do nothing else, have a WeChat presence. But guess what? You can't have a verified WeChat presence unless you have your legal entity. So it goes back to that first thing I was talking about. And then if you have a website, do figure out a way to make it not only Chinese, but also viewable on mobile devices. A lot of brands coming in, when they want people to have a central point of access for their information, they still want people to visit their website, but you know, if it's not optimized for China, meaning that both language and technology has to be China-based. So, okay, translate everything to Chinese, that's fine, but moving the Chinese website to a Chinese server is another pitfall that a lot of people fall into. And that's very important, because time and again I see like European brands make their Chinese websites and then host the Chinese websites on the European servers. And half the time it's either too slow or just completely inaccessible for the Chinese audience. So that needs to be taken care of. And the fifth one, I think, is figure out how to recruit your initial set of advocates. So how do you actually have a core group of people who immediately gain traction with your brand or with your offering, and then working with them to further influence other people in the market. So the trends that I see for this year and next year, I think live streaming, I already mentioned. Nobody has figured out how to do it yet, but it's right there and it's gaining mass popularity. So that's definitely something that if you want to be a very advanced marketer, that's something to look at. The other thing is understanding, but also figuring out the fact that we don't have Instagram in this market. And so as a standard Western marketing practice, every brand now has an Instagram presence, right? You could actually treat your Weibo like an Instagram if you want to. And they're different tactics, you know? I mean, nice isn't for everybody. I think nice is good if you're a very fashion-forward brand. So how do you translate that into an ecosystem that doesn't really have an Instagram? That's also something that I think as a trend, everybody's still trying to figure out. I tend to have a minority view on metrics. So I generally think, look, if you're going to do social media marketing, it is ultimately to achieve a certain business objective. A really easy metric is to say, all right, before I did any social media marketing, how was I doing? How was I tracking versus my business objectives? Versus after I started my social program, was there an increase of performance towards my objectives? I would generally give it at least 3 months. And this comes from experience. So I think at least 3 months to at least learn about your audience, to acquire some audience, and then do something with that audience to further activate your brand in that community. Well, no, I mean, if you have a certain number of fans, but they really aren't contributing to your business objectives, then what is the point?